Welcome to the RV6 finishing kit tape. In this tape we're going to demonstrate installing the sliding canopy, the optional two-piece wheel pans, and all the other things that come with your finishing kit. As with all of our tapes, the tapes are meant strictly for an entertainment purposes only, not an absolute how-to, but we're just trying to show you how we did our finishing kit on our RV6. Now, as with any operation, perform it safely. Read all the safety instructions on your tools and equipment, and wear your safety gear. Well, for now, enjoy the tape, and for me, I'm going to get some stick time in my airplane. In the finishing tape, we're going to be showing you the construction of the sliding canopy. However, we're unable to show you the construction of the clamshell canopy, but we can show you what a finished one looks like, and maybe you can get some hints from that. One of the main parts of the clamshell canopy is your rollover bar. You have to make this up yourself. It's actually a two-piece structure, goes all the way across with a splice plate in the center, and it's attached to the fuselage right at your bulkhead here. You'll go ahead and make this up. It's bolted down. There's some holes in the back side of this where you can reach through and get to your bolts, and it also acts as the frame for the aft part of your windshield. But still, the main structure of your clamshell canopy is the large canopy itself. Now, it comes in several components, and the instructions really do work fairly well, and what they do is they have you just clamp everything in place. Once your rollover bar is in place, is to clamp all your components together on the fuselage with some spacers, and you can move them and manipulate them around until you get them just where you want them, and then go ahead and drill them in place. The key to this is don't drill until you're absolutely satisfied with the position. A couple things to watch. You have a splice plate in the center here, and you can clamp that, and you can do some adjusting there. They even tell you that you have to rebend this, and this is real thick in here, and you basically want to use sort of a modified fluting tool and put flutes in here to create a different curve. And you want to get the sides of the canopy equal with the sides of the fuselage so it's going to fit. So, like I said, just clamp it together and work with it. It takes a little worrying to get it done. Now, a few things that we've done on ours that we've found that's helped is, one, we've added these gas cylinders. Now, this is a kit that actually comes from a gentleman named Keith Ellis. You can get his name from VANS, or if you watch The Aviator, it's in there. Really nice kit. It adds a third and fourth connection point, so you're just not connected here at your two hinge points, but also here and here. Now, Keith also recommends, and we didn't do it, and the only reason we didn't do it is because we already had a canopy built when we got these cylinders, is to actually create a fiberglass box in this area all the way along here. And once you do, that'll take all the shaking out of this canopy. It makes it a very rigid structure at that point. Now, a lot of people complain that the sliding or the clamshell canopies leak. Well, I don't want to break anybody's bubble, but all canopies leak. So it's just, where do they leak? The clamshell canopy leaks up in this forward skin right here where the canopy meets the forward part of the fuselage. The sliding canopy leaks in the back. The sliding canopy leaks in the seam in the front. So you do the best you can. Now, what you want to do, however, is you want to just assure that if it does leak, the water doesn't damage anything. So what we've done two things. Over top of our radios, on the inside here, we've created a small tray, like a rain trough, that if water leaks in, it just runs off. Also, on the forward side of our sub panel, where our radios are, we've actually created a small dome using some very thin aluminum, like 016, and created a cover over the radios, so even if water leaks in there, it's just going to run off. It won't get into the radios. And that's the only thing the water can damage, really. We're not talking great amounts of water, we're talking drops here. So you want to just make sure that even if it does leak, and it's going to leak, You want to make sure it can't get to your radios and it can't get to your circuit breakers. A couple other things that we added that aren't on the plans, and these weren't our ideas. These were from other builders, and that's the whole key to this, is take other builders' ideas and add to them. One, a small handle riveted right here. Trying to grab this aluminum right here is very tricky, especially when you're trying to lower the canopy. So a small handle tapered back right here, and you can just grab it and lift it up. The next thing is your seam between your canopy and your rear window. After the canopy was cut and the two pieces were separated and it was all riveted on, we fiberglassed this seam right here. And it's just about an inch and a half, 2 inches wide, piece of fiberglass that covers that seam. And that'll stop it from leaking here. It's fiberglassed onto the canopy and overlaps the rear window here. And you can see it right here. And you can see how it overlaps the skin. There's actually an overlap of the canopy about 3/4 of an inch there. And it overlaps here about 3/4 of an inch. Now if you put the Keith Ellis cylinders on, the one thing you will need is a little lanyard, because when the canopy gets about this far, it wants to go up. And the cylinders will hold it up. So you need something, one, to let it up gradually. And two, once you're bolted in, you can't reach that handle. You need this to pull the canopy back down. But we highly recommend the cylinders. The only other thing that we can show you that may help is that this canopy is lockable, and it's a very easy mechanism to lock it. We'll go around the other side and show you that. The canopy latch is right here, and this is done just according to the plans. You'll end up cutting a small slot through your skin and riveting your canopy latch here, and it basically just goes closed, and this locks it in so it can't open. And then to open it, you just squeeze these and your arm pulls out. Now, there is a way to lock this, and you can see the lock is right here. And basically this arm on the inside, and we'll come around here in a second and show you, there's a groove, so that when this is closed and you turn your key, it comes up into the groove and it locks it, so it can no longer twist back out. This is not on the plans, however, that's in some of the RVators, and if you contact VANS and ask about it, or even some other builders, you'll probably be able to find the plans. The lock comes with the starter key that you get from VANS. Matter of fact, you get two of these. You only need one. You can save one for in case this one goes bad. So this comes with your starter switch anyway. Here's looking down at your canopy latch, and here's your little, you can see it all working here. And this is running a rod that goes back and locks the canopy. Okay. But right here is that groove I was telling you about. There's a groove right here, and when this turns in and you turn your key, a plate rotates up into that groove and does not allow this to come back. So you can lock your canopy closed. On the inside, you've got these two pieces of angle that holds your mechanism here, and you have to cut a slot in the two pieces of angle also. But you can see that once the handle's closed, and this locks it so it can't open up, and then your locking just slides right up in there. Now if you release this, your handle can't move. Once this is out, it can open. That locks it in. Now, what actually does the locking, right here there's a hole that goes down through your plate here. When the canopy comes down, there's a piece that goes down through that hole that has a roller bearing on it, and then this little hook right here catches it. And when you move your mechanism, you can see it'll catch on that roller. Now, this is a shaft that goes all the way across, and there's another hook on the other side so it catches the other side of the canopy. But that basically is your locking mechanism. And this all down in here just takes a little cutting and a little fitting and juggling around, and you have to bend these linkages here a little bit to get them so they're smooth. But that's all it is to lock it. That's open and that's locked. And here's that latch we were talking about, and it just bolts right onto the canopy. Got a little roller right here to help when that hook comes through and grabs it. Now, the last thing we need to talk about is the handle up here. Now, per the plans, you can cut a groove in your rollover bar, or during taxing, you can actually set it down like this. Now you can taxi like that. The cylinders will pull it down. It probably wouldn't hurt to hold on, but like I said, you can actually cut a groove in your rollover bar so that this side of the handle turns into it, and that'll lock it and it can't go up and down for taxiing. The handle will swivel all the way around. You will find that the handle may swivel a little too freely, and we actually had to cut like a piece of inner tube to put between the handle and the little bushing so it wouldn't turn. It would actually vibrate sometimes, and our fear was that it would vibrate on the ground and we wouldn't be able to get the canopy open. In flight, we also turn the handle just as sort of a safety catch. In case our other latches let loose, we've got this safety catch. Now, to remove the canopy, you do have a removal handle that goes right here. And when you pull that, it's spring-loaded, so you can't pull it too easily. When you pull that, that pulls the pins out of your hinges that holds the canopy on. Now, this is also a safety mechanism. That's how you would jettison the canopy in case of a forced landing or something. However, once you've put the gas cylinders on, it's not going to jettison too easily because of the gas cylinders. I would not let that stop me from putting the gas cylinders on, however. The gas cylinders add so much to the sturdiness and the effectiveness of the canopy that they're well worth it. Now, other people have asked, have I made a mistake doing the clamshell canopy? Should I have done the slider? No. Only if you look at the airplane you go, boy, I don't like the clamshell canopy. If you like the way it looks, it does give you more visibility. There's absolutely nothing obstructing in front of you, like the slider has the rollover bar in the front and a structural bar in the front. The clamshell is a beautiful canopy. Very good visibility. The fall point on the clamshell always was that it's a little flimsy, and with the gas cylinders it really stiffens it up. People say it leaks. Well, they all leak. I wouldn't let that stop me. So if you're going to do the clamshell, yeah, you made a good decision. Before we actually do the construction of the sliding canopy, there's a few things we like to get out of the way when it's easy to do. First is namely the brake system. It's much easier to access the brakes and work on them before you've got this front deck on. Now, we not only have the dual rudder controls on ours, but we choose to put the dual brakes. A couple things with the brakes, you got to be a little creative here. One instance is this little cross piece here. Does not come with the plans, and basically it's the same shape as our member here with our nylon block, but just to give us another point for our tubes to run through. You've got your passenger side, co-pilot side brake cylinders over here. The top of each of the cylinders will have a line going up to a T for your brake reservoir. We haven't put that on yet. We don't mount anything on the firewall yet. Coming off the bottom, we bring our high pressure tubing over to the tops of the master cylinders on the pilot side. Then off the bottom of those goes over to the aluminum bracket that we welded into or riveted into the firewall during the original firewall construction. From there, we run aluminum tubing down to the bulkhead fittings that then go to the outside of the airplane. Now, the tubing for the co-pilot side got quite interesting because it not only came out here, but it had to go up and around the battery box and down and around. And you want to make sure you secure that properly. So this is the first thing that's easy to do before you get anything in this area. Of course, our battery box has been painted and it's complete and bolted in. So that's out of the way also. Once that's done, we're ready to start putting the front part of this deck on. Now, on the fuselage construction, we made this deck area, and we took it off just for ease of getting in here, but it's now time to rivet that up and put it back on. Once the framework for the front of the fuselage is put on, there were some pieces that we hadn't put on during the construction of the fuselage, namely this piece of angle right here. And it starts right at the firewall, right here, and it works all the way up. Now the reason that wasn't put on is a couple things. One, we have to cut a notch in our sub panel here, our 6105, so it fits through, but it has to line up with the brace for our rollover bar, which is the front part of our canopy support. So to do this, the front of the canopy had to be on. So this piece here will go in place when this goes on. We start the construction of our sliding canopy by putting our forward rollover bar on. Now, before we can do this, our canopy sides have to be on, and of course our structure in front has to be on. Now we've got the instrument panel, which goes here, removed. We start with our forward canopy support, which is also our rollover bar. And you want to place it, and there's measurements that are on the plans for exactly where you want to place it. Then you have to drill down. Now the next thing you have to do, there's these little brackets that go underneath here. And these are supplied in the kit, and they'll go underneath and bolt down through there. Now, we found the easiest thing was first to drill down and then take this all off and just hold these things underneath and mark them and drill them. Now you want this bar straight up and down. Now our fuselage is still sitting in the jig and the longeron is still level. This has to be a 90-degree angle here, and you're probably going to need a little shim, and we just made a little piece of aluminum, whatever size it takes, and that'll go right under this bolt right here, and that'll shim it to keep it at a 90-degree angle. Our forward support arm has been placed in and corresponds with that piece of angle there, and it's bolted in place and also drilled and bolted here. So now this becomes a pretty rigid structure. Once this is done, you want to go ahead and on your 6108 you want to mark where this support will go through. Because what we're going to have to do is actually put our skin on, transfer that mark to the skin, because this goes through the forward skin here. Take the skin off, cut a small groove in there, just big enough for that, and then put it back on. Once we've got our rollover bar in place, we can go ahead and put our skin on, our forward skin. Now, one thing we did before we put the skin on, with the fuselage, of course, it was already drilled and clecoed on. We measured from the instrument panel out approximately 3 inches, and you can decide what you want, but this is the overhang that you'll have over your instrument panel. You extend that line all the way down. Now when you come to this corner here, however, you need to have approximately 4 inches, so you need to radius this curve here. Also, you need to cut this slot in here. Now this slot will become real evident why you need it, because for one thing, with the rollover bar here, the aluminum can't bend around it, and the slot relieves that pressure. And also the canopy itself will actually fit inside here, like this. So you need this slot, radius this, and this will all be trimmed even after the canopy's put on. So the only thing that's really a permanent trimming is this where the overlap is. This area in here, some more will be trimmed off to suit our needs. We've clecoed it all back down, and this is what it looks like. You can see up in here where the brace has gone through the skin right in here, and that's all right because the canopy will come out like here down into here, so this will be all inside. And probably before we actually do the fiberglassing of putting the canopy, we'll paint this area in here flat black to reduce glare also. So once you've got it this far, that's about as far as you take this part. This should be very solid. Want this all clecoed down. Now the next thing we need to do is move to the back part and work on the canopy itself. Next we have to trim this top fuselage skin. Now what we did was take and put our canopy frame, and you can see it's just the sliding canopy frame, in place, just sitting in place. It was underneath this skin, completely underneath this skin. We then took a pen and drew the outline of the canopy frame on the skin. This was to get a sort of a preliminary measurement. From there, we trimmed it off about an inch off of that line. Now this is nowhere near the final trim because right now there's about 2 inches up here of skin hanging out, and that'll be trimmed back to less than a ½ inch. But this is just to get a start here, because remember, you've got your canopy frame, and then overlapping an inch or 2 will actually be the plexiglass, and then your fairing to seal it. So this is just a starting point right here. So we've drawn this on, trimmed it off. Then we've set it back in, and you can see it's now clear here, and we're ready to start the construction of the sliding canopy components. The sliding canopy itself slides on only 3 contact points. 2 are those roller points, and they slide on a track that comes supplied, and basically you just need to cut the track into the prescribed length, and you'll need 1 for each side. Now the 3rd point is a rail that you have to manufacture yourself, and it's 2 parts, and it's your C662 and 663, which is basically a 1-inch flat piece of stock, and then there is a ½ inch by 1/4 inch flat piece of stock that you rivet together to make your track, and it'll sit on top of the canopy. Now one end has a curve in it, and this will get screwed down to the top of the fuselage. But to start out, you're probably going to want to put rivets about every 3 inches, and maybe like a rivet here and 1 here and 1 here to maintain this curve. Now the height of the canopy on the back can be altered by altering this curve. The more the curve is pulled down, the lower the back of the canopy frame is, and this will come into play more and more as we fit the sliding canopy. The sliding canopy itself is a very intricate structure, and you can't say that you can mount any one given part. The basic theme is you mount your front rollover bar, and you get that centered, and that's your starting point. Everything else is built from there. We'll go ahead and actually mount the sliding part, the canopy frame itself, and we'll get it into where we think it almost should be, but nothing will be put in solid. Then we'll cut the canopy and put that on, and that'll adjust the height of the canopy and things, and this will become more evident as we go along. So once you've got your 3 contact points made up, you can temporarily place them on the fuselage. One of the first things we need to construct per plans SC1 is the roller assembly that'll go on the bottom of the sliding canopy, and it slides along the track to move the canopy back and forth. Now this assembly consists of your 644 weldment, also has your nylon wheel which you put a screw through, and then there's 2 little bearings that go inside the wheel and between the weldment right here, and it's shown right here on the plan, and then a nut on the back with a thin washer, And then this is the roller assembly that your sliding canopy will actually roll on. We start by putting our side rails on. Now we've put them in place and we've adjusted the side of the canopy here so it lines up with the rollover bar, and you can adjust the canopy side to side until it lines up. Now this is all temporary placement. Our rollers have been put into the tube so they slide along the rail. We've also taken and cut a piece of stick. Now what that stick is the exact width that these tracks need to be. So once we line the front up, we can move the stick to the back, put it in back, and we can line the back up. And that makes it easier to adjust the tracks back and forth for some adjusting. Once that's done, our 662, 663 rail that we made up has been temporarily duct taped, and actually we have a couple clecos in it now, but it's been put in place. You have to trim the skin right here to allow for your nylon bushing that's on your canopy to go in there. And now it's temporarily in place, and as you can see, we can lift it up. Our bushing slides on our little track here, and the canopy will come back. Now, nothing is set permanent right now, and there's a couple good reasons for that. So we close the canopy. In the back, like I said, the bend on that track will bring the back of the canopy down. The adjustment on where we drill the holes in the tubes that hold the rollers on will depend on the height of the front frame. And we really don't know exactly what we want until we actually cut the plexiglass and set it on here, and then raise the frame up until it matches the plexiglass, and lower the back until the plexiglass matches the fuselage. So once we get to this point, we're just about ready to go ahead and cut the plexiglass. One thing we will do is make this rail a little bit more permanent. Work on this so it's centered here, and what we'll do is pull it back a little bit here and get our side-to-side adjustment so our tracks are where we want them, and put a couple of our screws in that hold the tracks on rather than just have it clecoed on or C-clamped on. Make it a little more sturdy. And then we're ready to cut our plexiglass and put it on and start getting things lined up a little bit better. And here's the bubble we start with to build our canopy. We've taped off where we want to cut with masking tape, and we'll show you this a little closer just before we cut, but we've taped the front according to the drawings on the plans. We've also put masking tape on the back. Now the masking tape is to give us a guideline where we're going to cut, and it also is to protect the canopy in case the cutting tool, which is a little 3-inch cutoff wheel, would happen to slip. Now you want the canopy put on a nice level surface. We use the box that it actually comes in, and you want it to be fairly warm. You don't want to do this during cold weather. You want to warm it up into the 70s, 80 degree range. You can leave the plastic coating on, and that's just going to give you a protection against scratches while you're working with it. And a basic theme here is going to be just to make several cuts one at a time, and to just cut and fit the canopy until it fits in place. The first cut we're going to do will be on the front. Now to cut the canopy, like I said, you want to use a small cutoff wheel that comes with the kit. You can get spare one of these through VANS or through Avery Enterprises. You can use a cutoff die grinder. You can also use your air drill. You want to turn your air down so it's not turning real fast. We prefer to have a slower cut than a faster speed. Now actually your first cut should be down here in the corner or on this edge somewhere, just as a practice cut. Try a couple cuts and get used to it. What you want to do is let the cutting wheel pull itself across while you're controlling it and cut a groove, and then cut a second groove, and then cut a third groove, and it'll take 4 or 5 passes. You don't want to try and do it all at once. Now this of course is the front of the canopy, and per the instructions we've measured up 5.5 inches from where the canopy comes down and stops, and you can see it'll start to bend out. So we've measured 5.5 inches from there up to here, and that'll be the first cut. And we've just stretched this piece of masking tape all the way across, and we're going to cut on the bottom part of this masking tape so the top part protects the canopy in case the die grinder or the cutting wheel would pop up. And we'll cut that all the way across to the other edge, from edge to edge. Once that's done, we'll go back and we'll cut the back the same way from edge to edge. So right now we'll get started. I usually do it in 2 cuts. I'll cut from here across and then from here down. Okay, now that our first cut is done, and like I said, we've just gone from about the center all the way down, and you want to get it all the way down to the corner there. Now we're going to make our second cut, which will start in the center and go all the way across this way. Okay, once we've got this cut all the way across from corner to corner on the front, we've got our first series of cuts done. Now, if you're of the opinion at this point that you don't like this is a little on the spooky side, because this thing is going to start getting rather flimsy. You can see the front here will bend, and yeah, you can create a gap in there. Well, don't feel bad. I haven't met anyone who got a whole lot of enjoyment out of cutting this canopy. It's kind of scary. The trick is to just take it slow and cautious, and remember, you can always cut more off, but you can't add on to it. So from here we're going to go ahead and go to the back and trim the back of the canopy. Okay, now in the back of the canopy you do basically the same thing. To get your measurement here on the back, there's 2 things to measure. Now remember, we started 5.5 inches up, and the book says 5.5 to 6.5 inches. I'm a coward, so I take the 5.5. I can always cut that other inch off. You measure from that cut up through the center 63 inches. Well, my 63 inches comes to right about here, about the middle of this tape. Then they measure from, again, down on the bottom up 15 inches. Well, the 15 inches comes to the edge of the tape, and again I'm going to take the safe side out, so I'll cut the 15 inches. I can always cut this extra 3/4 of an inch off later. Now you may have noticed on the front I did not cut the skirt off. I'm going to try and leave the skirt on as long as possible to keep this rigid. This thing will start to become very flimsy as we start to cut it off, and with the skirt on I can duct tape it back together to help hold it in place till it's done. But for right now, we're just going to again start in the center here and work our way all the way down. And in the book they show a very nice gradual curve in here. Now I didn't mark that in either. What I do is just cut straight off, and later I'll mark that curve once it's in place. So I'm just going to cut all the way down to the corner, but I won't cut the skirt because I want to leave the skirt on to help give it some strength while we're cutting. Okay, and there's the back cut, and again you can see the back part of here gets a little flimsy, and now you can lift this up and you can see how flimsy this thing's starting to get now. from here, we want to go ahead and just do the sides, and we've taped down just to the edge. You just want to cut it off right where the canopy comes down and starts to flare out. You just want to cut it off right there, and then your bubble's cut loose. From there, we want to go ahead and put it onto the canopy frame. Now this doesn't make any difference whether you're cutting a canopy for a sliding canopy or a tilt-up canopy. It's all the same cut for right now. So from here, we're going to go ahead and cut the sides and get this thing fitted on the frame. And like I said, on the sides, we've gone ahead and put the masking tape, and you can see right here, this is where it flares out. And we want to go ahead and just cut along this edge, again having the masking tape. Now, something you may want to also do is on this edge right here is tack down some little blocks of wood, and that'll stop this thing from rocking back and forth. You don't want this thing to start wiggling on you, and it's going to. And then once this is cut, this will drop down in this lip and it'll support it. So you want to go ahead and probably nail blocks of wood here and also down at the other end. And then just start here and cut yourself right on down. And once your canopy is cut, you go ahead and put it on the frame. Now you do the same whether it's a sliding canopy or a tilt-up canopy or even an RV4 canopy. Your canopy frame on an RV4 should be in place right now, and you want to do the same thing. You can see our masking tape's still on, and we've just put it roughly in place. Now in the back here, we had to lift this skin up. This skin would wrap around like this. We have to lift it up to tuck it under here, because remember, we didn't make that complex cut. And we'll actually just, now that we've got our canopy frame under there, we can mark this to cut this. Same thing up in the front. We're going to have to do a little trimming to get it to fit down, and you want it to fit on your roll bar nice. Also remember, the screws that hold the rollers here have not been drilled yet, so this the canopy frame itself can be brought up to match the canopy and the rollover bar. And also on top, you've got a hole that you're going to have to drill in the canopy to allow for your handle to go through, and there's a little nub up there that you're going to have to drill and let it up through there. So from this point here, what we want to do is start doing some measurements, and basically what we're going to do is measure from side to side in a couple places and find the center of the canopy, and then center that up on the canopy frame and get it in a position where we think it should go. And this just takes a little time, and this is one of those places where a little time and patience pays off. And once we get it in position, we're not going to worry about this little gap here, because this little nub is holding us up. And once we cut the hole, it'll drop down onto our frame here a little bit better. But we want to get it centered and get it straight, and then we'll drill this little hole here, and it's not a little hole, it's about 1/2 inch, 5/8 of an inch hole. Then we'll start trimming. We'll trim the back here, so we can then put our skins back down, but we'll trim the back to match the canopy frame here. Then we'll trim the front until it fits nice. And you want to cut this curve in here a little bit, and this will sort of be, you trim the back not all the way, and then you trim the front not all the way, and then you trim the back, and you trim the front, and you trim and you trim, and you work it down in, because you trim the front, it'll drop this, and it'll change the positioning of the back a little bit. So you don't want to go whole hog the first time, leaving our protective plastic on. And whenever we trim, we'll actually put a piece of masking tape on, and we'll draw real nice lines on the masking tape and cut from there. So it's about all we can show you on this, and it's just time to go ahead and do it. Once we've trimmed the canopy and got it fitted the way we want it, we went ahead and drilled. Now this is a two-person job. The first part you can do with one person, and the first part is you want to trim, or you want to drill the clecos that hold the canopy to the front rollover bar. And you want to start at the top and work from side to side. And what I mean is you want to start right dead here in the center and go to the left, go to the right, go to the left, go to the right. And this will pull the canopy down. Now, before you do that, however, in the back, you want to clamp this down really good. You don't want any possibility of it moving. And believe me, if it can, it will. So in the back, we've put a bunch of Clecos, or a bunch of C-clamps, and we've got it all clamped down. Now back up the front, we started our drilling, and we drilled right on down, and we got it drilled to the rollover bar. Now the next stage took a second person. You got to take these Clecos out, put a person on the inside, because you're going to drill to the canopy frame. And again, you're going to start dead center. Before you do this, however, you need to drill the hole in the top here, like we said, so you have to lift the canopy frame and physically lift it up. And what we've done right here, we've put a little block of wood, and we've lifted it up and measured how high it needs to be. And there's a little block of wood, and it's been strapped in right here, and that's holding the canopy frame up. And then later the block of wood will be taken out, and there's a bolt right here that holds your roller to the canopy frame, and that'll be drilled in. But for right now, the block of wood's there. So we've lifted our canopy frame up, and we again started in the center and went left, right, left, right. But you'll get to the point where you need some shims, because the canopy frame isn't quite bowed exactly to the plexiglass. So you're going to need to put some shims in. So you need somebody inside sliding these shims in. Now, this is important, because if you drill these holes and put a Cleco in there, and that Cleco pulls against the plexiglass without the shims under there, you do run the risk of actually cracking your plexiglass. And take it from experience, because we did it on our first airplane. Fortunately, it wasn't a bad crack, and we were able to work around it. But you can crack it, so you need somebody on the inside applying shims while you're on the outside drilling. So we drilled the rollover bar, then we drilled right on down the center of the canopy frame, and per the plans, there's a strip of aluminum goes under there between the canopy and the canopy frame. And actually on the outside there's also a strip of aluminum, but for right now we didn't drill that. We'll actually back drill through the plexiglass and drill that in place at a later time. Once this was all drilled and Clecoed on, and by the way, the person on the inside is going to get a little stuffy, so you may want to try and put a fan or something to blow some air in there for him. Then we need to split the canopy frame off of the windshield, and that's just per the instructions right on up in this area. And what you need to do is actually take some masking tape and masking tape off right where you want to cut. And you're going to probably have to take one set of Clecos out to allow yourself some room, and we've done that, and it's already cut. And then your canopy and your windshield separate. Once we got everything drilled and Clecoed and we've made our cut, we've taken the clamps off here just so we can show you what it looks like when the canopy does open. It rides up on the back and slides right along the track. Our rails have not been put permanently in place yet. That'll come shortly, but we still want to be able to little movement in the canopy so we can align it. You'll find once you've cut this canopy apart that the windshield may tend to want to fit a little bit better against the rollover bar. And remember, we've only used number 40 drills, and we're going to be drilling this out to 1/8 inch, so you can pull a Cleco off and maybe get this to fit against the rollover bar a little bit better. And re-drill it, and it'll be off just a little bit, but your screw holes will hide this. Same thing in the canopy frame. You want to refit it a little bit since it's cut off. You'll find it'll fit a lot easier once it's cut off. Now the first thing you want to do is polish these edges off, and basically the front part's done, so you can go ahead and we actually used a flap sanding wheel with a fine grit sandpaper on it, and just sanded the edges to get it smooth to alleviate stress cracks. We've also drilled the canopy into the side skin here where it came out. It gets, this one will go into the rollover bar, and then there's two holes, one here and one here, and they'll get screws put in to help hold it there. Now from here, the next thing you want to do is put your canopy back, and you're going to be working on these side skin areas. Now you want to clamp this back down, because you can see this will wiggle around a little bit on you, so you want to clamp it back down. Once it's clamped back down, you want to mark your canopy for cutting again, and you want to cut right along this top rail here, and you want to cut it so that the plexiglass just will clear the top rail. Now that'll be in preparation for putting your C655s in, which go under the plexiglass, and you have to notch them a little bit on the front of the rollover bar, and you notch them a little bit in the back here, but they'll go like that. Then on top of that will go another skin like that, okay? And these two skins now sandwich the plexiglass between them, and these will get drilled and pop riveted to the canopy frame, and then through the two will be drilled and screws put in to hold the canopy plexiglass to the frame. And this is just according to the plans. Now, one of the problems, however, as you can see, is this skin is very flexible, and even if it's pop riveted here, it can move. And you want a nice contour between the fuselage and the canopy frame. The problem being is there's such a big gap in here. Now, talking with some of the people at VANS, something that was recommended was to take and weld small tabs of 4130 right into there. And what this small tab will then do is give you, you're going to be drilling and pop riveting here, and you can also drill and rivet here. It gives you a second attachment point for this canopy skirt. And then you can bend these. You only want to make them 40 thousandths of an inch thick, and what we're going to make ours is about 1.25 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. And once they're welded on, you can bend them to adjust this canopy skirt, and they'll go every 4 inches along here, and that'll help us align this canopy skirt. So that's what we're going to do next. And once we've got the little finger tabs welded on, here's what they'll look like. And they're just spaced every 4 inches right on along. And they're fairly secured. We just use a small MIG welder and welded them to the bottom of the tube, and they're bent out. Now, what you do is you can take a small piece of aluminum and put up here like this, simulating the canopy skin, and adjust these. And you can bend them right here or whatever it takes to get a nice flush fit, and right on along. So once they're on, the next thing we need to do is some measuring so we can find the center of this tube to drill. So what I did from the top of the side skin, every 6 or 8 inches across here, I measured, and I measured from right here up to the center of the tube, and I drew a line, and that's an index line, so when I hold my ruler back there, I know I'm pointing in the same direction. And I measured that space right there and wrote it down on the side of the airplane. And I did that along here, and that's just so I can find the center of the tube. Because once I put my 659 skirt on, you can see the tube disappears. So you put this on, and remember, you got a little notch you have to notch up in front here, and a small notch in the back. Then next comes your side skin, and what you want to do is just hold that up there and measure from the line where you drew up to where your tube is, and we start drilling in the center, hitting the tube and working our way to the edges. And like I said, all those lines are is just little helpful guides so you can find the center of the tube. So you work your way right on across, Now, once you've got this line established, the next thing you need to do is drill your second row for rivets here. And you start by back drilling. You'll actually need someone inside with the drill and somebody outside here with a block of wood. And what you're going to do is back drill through those little finger braces through here. And that'll be your starting point. So again, you start in the center and we'll back drill them on. Okay, and there's your side skirt, a good start on your side skirt now. From here, we're going to want to start and work on our rear skirt now. We don't want to be drilling into the plexiglass yet. We're not quite there yet. We don't want to do anything too permanent on that. So what we've done on the back skirt, where it was originally all clecoed on, we've taken, drilled, I think it's 3 or 4 places we've drilled and put small pop rivets in this skirt here. The reason for that is you want the plexiglass pulled down to this tube so you can put this side skirt on. And you can't do that with a bunch of clecos in it or a bunch of clamps on it. So we went ahead and put 3 or 4 pop rivets on each side and pop riveted the canopy, and we can take the clecos out here. It's pop riveted on, it's not going to go anywhere. And now we're ready to start putting our side skirt on. The canopy is latched from the canopy frame to the rollover bar with a little handle here. Now this takes a little working to get it to fit right. It comes unassembled. You've got the welded part of the handle, you've got the latching part here and a spring which helps to pull it back. There's also a little brass bushing right here. Now the stem that goes up through the canopy frame itself has to be measured and cut, and also the canopy frame has to be cut. And what you're trying to do is align this part of the latch with the knob on the rollover bar right here. Okay, so you want to get them level. So once you've cut the bottom of the canopy frame to get that, then you push it up through here. Then you're going to have to cut the handle itself so you can put this top part on, and then it simply just gets a screw that goes through everything, and you drill this and tap it to hold it, and this allows you to turn it. You want it so that when it's in the closed position it's aerodynamic and pointing back. And then when you close your frame, it just closes and locks like that. Open it up, open your canopy up. Before we start doing anything on the side skirts, first we've got to take this little wooden block out that was here, and that was maintaining our spacing. We want to go ahead and, while that's still in place, go ahead and drill and put the bolt in to hold our roller bearing in. Then on the back goes a nylon bushing held in by aluminum block here, and that's for the back support, and your canopy will fit right into there. Now, the secret for drilling that block, I don't know if there is one. What you want to do is get the block in place, get your canopy in place, and just sort of decide where this is going to contact that block. And that's your starting point. Then you want to look at it and draw a line and figure, well, this is the angle that this is coming in, and it's going to be that way, and then drill that hole. Now, if the hole's off a little bit, that's fine, because you don't drill the bottom in yet. Once you've got your hole worked and you've got that set in, you can adjust this a little bit. It's still not drilled to the longeron, once you've got it adjusted, then you hold this in place, take it out, drill your Londron. What you want to do is make some marks here on the end so you can put this back in the way it started. It's a little bit of a trial and error, but what this is going to do, this is what holds the back of your canopy on. So you want to get that in nice and tight. So once you've got those two things done, you're ready to go on. Now, a couple little hints. Is the front part of this roller right here may get in the way of your canopy rollover bar. And what I mean get in the way, it won't allow your canopy to come all the way up against the rollover bar. This little roller will hit that, so you can take and file that back a little bit to get clearance. And you want to get it so it comes up and fits as nice and tight as possible. Before we start on the side skirts, there's a couple things you want to do. First of all, where your little nylon bearing block is, where the rear of the canopy catches, you want to loosen that up and put about an 1/8 inch shim in there. Now what you're trying to do is deliberately lift the canopy up. So you're going to try and get your tightest possible fit, and then when you take that shim out and pull it down, hopefully you'll have a little better fit. Okay, so we've put our shim in there. We've got a few pop rivets along here. Now, the next thing is we've got the same problem. How do we find this tube under here? Your canopy frame comes around and there's that tube there. Well, what we've done up on the canopy, since we've still got our cover over it, we've measured from the center of the tube out. We drew a line. Now you want to draw a line because what that does is tell you the exact angle that your ruler needs to be when you're going to draw this line. So you draw a line and you say to the center it's 3 inches and you put a 3-inch mark. And you come down here and the center 3 inch and another 3 inch. And you got to do this about every 4 or 5 inches because this thing's on a curve and it's not a straight tube. So you can't just say one here and draw a line in the middle because you're going to miss. So from the center of the tube, draw a line, put a tick mark and put a 3 or a 4, however many inches it is. This is just to help you locate this tube. And if we pull some of the plastic back a little bit, you can see the tube right under here. And we're just trying to get to this, hit the center of that tube. So we're measuring from the tube out. So we've got this shimmed 1/8 of an inch. We've got our measurements for our tube. Try and keep this on, keep any scratches. Now, next comes the rear skirt. This comes supplied. When you cut it out, it's already marked, but when you cut it out, cut it big. Now, you can either clamp it at the top and go to the bottom, or you can clamp it at the bottom and go to the top. I choose to go from the bottom up. So what we did was we actually started by putting a couple rivets in it, or a couple clecos in it, and getting it positioned at the bottom. Now the next thing you want to do is to put this on here and start working your way up. So you're putting it on, and after you get a couple clecos drilled in place, the fun starts. Because as they say at the factory, they told me at the factory, is you want to grab this thing up here and you want to push it down. As you push the front of this thing towards the front of the airplane, you want to pull it down as tight as you can and just work your way right on down. Now, I'm here to tell you that sounds a lot easier than what it is, because you're working a compound curve in here. But with a little patience, you can work that right on, and you're trying to get a nice fit here and a nice fit here, and you're constantly pulling and pushing and working this thing right on around. Now, I've talked to some builders that said that they had to do it 2 or 3 times with 2 or 3 sets of skin. So don't be disappointed if you get back and you look at it and you go, no, that's just not what I want. and you start over again. Now, ours wasn't what we'd call picture perfect, but it wasn't bad. There's a little bit of a gap back here. I'm talking 1/16 of an inch, just in some places here, and it's not bad. We also, along this edge here, we used a shrinking tool and shrunk this edge down, which gave it a little bit of a curl, which brought it down even a little tighter. But once you just got to work and pull it, and remember, you've got this 1/8 inch shim under here, so once you pull that shim out, it's going to drop down even tighter, and that's what you want. You want to get this as tight as possible. And there's your skins. You do that to both sides. We've got one of the rear skirts on, the other one's not on yet. But the problem that you're going to come into once you get them both on is your rail here. And you have to have the rail for your canopy to pick up, but you can see there's going to be a big gap in here. So what you need to do is make yourself a little fairing. That'll go right in there and seal that up. Now this was just made out of some 2024, and what I did, I angled it. If you see the side of it, it's just a little triangle angle, flat on the bottom. And you can make this using your hand seamer, or if you got a small metal brake. And it's just to go right over top of there and seal that area up right there, so when your canopy's closed, of course when it's open, it'll be on there just like that. Now that our side skins have been drilled and clecoed on, and our rear skins have been drilled and clecoed on, and we're happy with the way they are, and we've done our trimming. You need to trim the forward part of it and trim the back part to get a nice curve, and that's why I say cut them a little big so you can trim them down to your size. The last thing we need to do is one last row of screws that go along the top part of the C660, and they'll go through the C660, through the plexiglass, and through the C659. So what you want to do is draw your line and get your measurements and drill and cleco through there. Now when you do this, be careful not to split your plexiglass, so you want to maybe use a drill bit that's been modified to drill plexiglass. Once you've drilled cleco this in, the next thing you need to do is to drill this piece of nylon in. Now the nylon is actually going to be used to hold screws. It goes on the inside of the canopy. So what we did was draw a line down through the center of the nylon, and this is another two-person job. One person on the inside holding it, and you should be able to look through your hole and see the line. And then you drill through that also, again using a 3/32 or a number 40 drill bit. And drill and cleco this on, but on the inside. Then you take this off. You don't want any holes any bigger than the number 40s to allow your number 6 screws to thread into this. Once you've done that, you've basically drilled and clecoed everything you need to do. It's time to now take all this apart, and what I mean by that is this row of holes here where the screws go, your C660 will be dimpled, and your plexiglass countersunk to accept the number 6 screws. You'll have places where you're going to be using 1/8 inch pop rivets, like up along the side here. So you want to take your 3/32 clecos out and back drill with an 1/8 inch, and you want to use an 1/8 inch plexiglass drill bit here so you don't mess up your plexiglass, and drill through the canopy frame and countersink for that. Further forward on your windshield, the clecos that are in here will be taken out, and these holes actually get tapped now to accept number 6 screws just on the forward part and down to here. And you want to start taking all this apart now, and as you do, make sure you drill it out for your pop rivets or whatever size holes you need. Dimple where you need to dimple, countersink where you need to countersink. And this will all come apart. The canopy frame will come off and be painted. On our front skin here, we've gone ahead and done a little extra trimming on the inside above the instrument panel where our shield was to make that nice and smooth, because when this all gets taken off, this will be taken off, this skin will be taken off and primered, and it'll be riveted back on since we've done everything we need done here. Also in the back now, once the canopy frame comes off, this aft turtle deck skin will be cleaned up, dimpled. We'll put that little bend right along the edge here so it fits nice and tight, because this is ready to go on finally, and it'll be primered on the inside, and we're ready to really just take this all apart after all our hard work putting it together. Take it all apart and get the canopy frame painted for the final time, and ready to put it back together for the last time. And here's how our canopy skins finally came out at. Now, I will tell you, we did have to do ours over again. This is the second set. We did the first set basically like the second set, except we made the second set a little wider. These are 6 inches wide. On the drawing they show them being almost 7, and our first set was only about 5 inches, and it just wasn't wide enough to seal. We also trimmed the canopy so it was only about a ½ inch overlap on the canopy frame, and that seemed to help a little bit more. And basically we just did it over again and until we got it right. When we made our second set, though, we did purchase some 2024 T3 instead of T4 aluminum, and that seemed to be able to pull and shape it a little bit better. So if your first set doesn't come out just the way you want it, just drill them out, drill the pop rivets out, and make yourself another set. One last thing before you do take everything apart, think about something, and that's how to lock your canopy closed. Now there's as many ways to lock it closed as there are builders. The way we choose to do it is using the lock that comes with the ignition key from VANS, and it'll fit right into the corner of your canopy right here. You can see here's the roller bearing for your canopy. This is the front of the canopy frame, and we've placed it right here, right under the canopy frame, and it turns. Now where it's doing, it's impacting on the roller carriage here, the little frame here. Now we've got it open so you can see it, but you can see how it moves. What we've done forward of the frame right in here, we've cut a groove, and that arm will swing down into the groove and lock it. We've not only put the groove here, and this is about 2 inches from the canopy frame, and it's the rollover bar, and it's where it needed to be. But a little after that, right here, we've put another groove. And the reason for that is we can leave the canopy open about 4 inches and lock it in that position. And this is nice for at air shows, so you can lock it open a little bit so heat doesn't build up. So what it looks like on the other side, we'll show you here. Again, here's the front of the canopy frame, the back's this way. Here's the rollover bars right here. And here's the little lock. And basically you just put your key in, you turn it, that turns that arm down into the canopy frame, and now if somebody would try and pull the canopy back, it would catch and wouldn't allow it. And then all you have to do is put the key in and it'll open. Now what the other lock position is right there, and it allows the canopy to be left open, and again they can't get it open because it's locked. And there's one alternative, one way you can use to lock your canopy closed. Okay, we start by putting our forward skin on here, and it was nothing different than any of the other riveting. Remember that you don't want to put the row of rivets in the very front here, because these will get squeezed on with the hinge that holds the cowling on. Also, before we took the front part of the canopy off, we took and drew a line here, and that shows us how far the canopy comes down. Before we actually put the canopy on, this area in here, which is going to be inside the cockpit, you want to paint either a flat black or the same color as the inside of the airplane. So we're going to use that line and tape that off and paint this before we do anything else. In the back, it's just straight riveting. Don't forget to put your little crease in both on the bottom and on the back seam here. Before we put this on, we did some painting up in here. We painted the top of the longeron. We painted the brace that goes across the seat here. Now that this is on, again, before we start putting the canopy on, we're going to paint inside here, and we're going to paint up inside here. This is the time to do it before we put the canopy on. So from here, we're just going to go ahead and tape everything off so we don't get overspray on everything, and paint these areas. And after the painting, we go ahead in our final assembly. The front part of the canopy's been put back on, and it's been screwed in with the screws that have been tapped into the rollover bar. Of course, the main part of the canopy has been pop riveted on the front. Our side skirts have been pop riveted on. Our back skirts have been pop riveted on. And this is all done. Now, to finish up the canopy, we need to fiberglass in this part here. And you actually want to fiberglass the plexiglass into the aluminum all the way around in the front, comes around to here and then up over, so that it overlaps the main part of the canopy by 1/4 of an inch or so. But before we get into that, because that's kind of a messy thing, and it takes a while where you fiberglass a little and you sand a little and then you put some fiberglass on, we're going to go on and show you what you can be doing while you're doing this in amidst not wanting to work on fiberglass. And the first thing is we're going to start with the engine mount. Now the engine mount was put in place with just 2 1/4-20 bolts in the top supports here, and they were the holes that you used to bolt the firewall to the jig. Now the whole plane is still sitting on the jig. So we've taken and put 1/4-20 bolts in those holes, and that held it in place. Then down on the bottom here, we just did some measuring, and we measured to make sure that we had equal distance. And what you want, if you look on the plans, it's 1 3/4 from the bottom edge here to the center of this hole. And we just measured both sides to make sure we had that. And then we measured from the engine mount to the outside and made sure that distance was equal, and we were fairly assured that the engine mount was then in the place where we wanted. Then while it was still held in place with these bolts, we went ahead and just used the engine mount itself as a drill guide and drilled straight on through and onto the inside and put the bolts in. And you do that one, tighten it down. Then we did the center ones, and the only one left is the upper ones. Now the upper ones, you can see here's the bolt, and basically you just want to use a 3/8 inch drill. We're using a 3/8 inch electric drill, and like I said, we're going to use the mount basically as a drill guide, and just put it in and drill all the way through. Once our hole's through, we're then ready for our bolt. You're ready for the bolt that we use, and that has to be inserted from the inside out. Once the bolt's through, the next concern is the number of washers. Since this will be Carter keyed on, you want to make sure you have enough washers so that your Carter key fits properly. And experience tells us that 2 will do what we need to do. So we go ahead and put 2 washers. Now, you may get this tightened down and find that, no, that wasn't enough washers, and have to either add or subtract washers. Now, Becky's on the inside holding this. Now, if Becky will let go for a second. Okay, I had her let go, so now the top of the hole, the Carter key hole's up top. Now, when she has a wrench back on, we're going to torque these down. Now, we looked up in our book, and a 3/8 24, which is what these bolts are, should be torqued down between 160 and 190 inch-pounds, which works out to be about 15 foot-pounds. So using our torque wrench, we then torque it down to 15 foot-pounds. Once we've torqued down, we go ahead and put our Carter key in. Might as well put it in now so you don't forget. The trick to Carter keys is they have a long edge and a short edge. The long edge is the edge that will be wrapped up and around the bolt itself. And the short edge will be bent backwards. And there our engine mount bolt has been securely fastened. Now, one thing we did, the left side top and the left side bottom bolt, we did not put a Carter key in right now. Now, the reason for that is that our battery ground wire we hook on our left side bottom. That's our ground connection to our chassis. Then you're going to need a ground wire from the chassis to the engine, and that's where we bring our second ground wire off the left side top, and that'll come across the engine and be grounded to the engine. Other than that, the others have all been bolted and pinned in. Now, of course, if this was a tail dragger, your gear mount would be here. Since this is a tricycle gear, your nose wheel goes here, and that's what we're going to work on next. Now, your nose wheel landing gear, when it comes from the factory, has already been pre-drilled up in the top, and that'll correspond with the hole up in your engine mount. So to start, what we did, we primered and painted this upper part. Now, the lower part won't get painted because it'll get fiberglass, but you do want to paint this upper part. We also painted and have already mounted the wheel stop, and this is what stops the wheel from totally casting around, and it's been painted and bolted on, and that also came pre-drilled, so you didn't have to drill anything. Also, if you notice the color, you'll get some idea of what color this plane's going to be. So this can be just slipped right up into the mount. Now, these will probably fit real tight, and that's what you want. We also had to oil it just to get it up in there, and your bolt will go in the hole, and basically that's all it takes to mount your nose gear. Now, don't get too interested about tightening this bolt down. It'll actually come off and on a couple times because we've got a fiberglass, a fairing in here, and do some other stuff on the wheels. Now, our wheel will be mounted to a bracket, and now you can really get an idea what color this plane's going to be. And this goes right on the front right here and has a nut that holds it on the bottom. Now, the one thing you do have to do is drill the hole for the Carter key to hold this nut on. And there's a series of washers and all that goes on and holds that on.
and we'll show you how to do that next. We start by just putting our wheel attachment on. Then we've got two convex concave washers, and we put them together so they form a wider, you don't want them sitting one inside the other, you want them wide so they can be compressed. And then on top of those goes another bigger washer, and then on top goes the nut. Now this will get tightened down after it's all put together so that there's a certain amount of pressure against these washers, and this is what gives you your shimmy damping effect, and this is what stops this from moving back and forth. So for right now, what you want to do is tighten this down and then drill a hole going front to back through the gear mount itself to put the cotter pin in that'll hold the nut on, and then you're finished with the nose wheel, and then that just sits like that. To figure out how tight you should make this nut on the bottom, it's real simple. First you want to go ahead and mount your front nose wheel support. Put yourself a plastic tie through the end hole, and this is where your axle bolt will go. There's some holes forward that help hold the wheel pan on, but you want to use the end hole. Then you simply take a fishing scale, something that'll go up to at least 22 pounds pressure, because what you want to do is hook the fishing scale on here, and you want to start pulling, and the mount should not move until you hit 22 pounds. So we're coming up on 21, 22, about 23. I'm starting to move. Okay, so that's what you want. You want about 22. Now what you want to do is tighten this nut up and then move it back and forth a little bit, wear it in a little bit, and then try it again. Okay, so now it's at 22, right on the nose. Then you pull all this out and you can measure just how far up your hole needs to be, and then go ahead and drill your hole for your cotter pin. Be advised that we noticed on our first airplane that this did tend to loosen up after about the first 2 or 3 flights, and this thing will vibrate like an old shopping cart wheel. So you want to check this after your first couple flights, and it's not real bad. And you can check it with the wheel on. You simply hook a wire pin through the hole in your wheel pan where your bolt would go through, and do the same thing. But for right now, you just want to get a general idea how tight this nut should be, how far up it goes, and where you need to drill your hole for your cotter pin. Now the next thing we need to do is make up our nose wheel, and even our main tires we can put together at this point. Now your wheels are a 2-piece aluminum wheel held together by 3 bolts. We then have our inner tube and our tire. So we start by taking our rim apart, and it's not that difficult a job. You basically put a wrench on your nut, the bolt side, and once you get the 3 nuts off, watch out, there are 3 washers, and you want to save them, and your 3 bolts come out, and your rim comes apart. You got your 2 halves and your brake disc. Now we'll keep the side with the brake disc separate for right now, and what we're concerned with is the side that has the little rubber bushing in it, and that's where your tire valve stem will go through. So we want to go ahead and put the valve stem through that, and it's a tight fit. There's a little corresponding notch in the 2 halves, and the valve stem nut will fit right in there. Okay, and then the valve stem comes out right here. Now the next thing we need to do is literally baby our tire. And what I mean by baby that is we take our tire and we take some baby powder or talcum powder and put some down inside. and roll that around. Now, what the talcum powder does is coat the inside of the tire so that the tube doesn't chafe or wear on it. And you want to roll that around in there real good. I like to put a little bit around the edge here. It'll help the tire slip onto the rim come time. And yeah, this is how the big boys do it too. Okay, once we've got our powder in there and we've shaken out any excess, now it's time to put the tube inside the tire, and you just sort of very unceremoniously stuff it down in there. Through the opposite side. The next thing we need to do is put the other half on. Now it pays to try and push this down a little bit. Now we put the other half on. Now remember, you've got the little notch here, and that corresponds with the valve stem. And you want to push that down in there. Okay. And the last thing we want to do is go ahead and start putting our bolts down in. They should line up all the way through. And if they don't, you can just look down in there and see what it's going to take. Now, once I've got the 3 bolts and nuts started, I do the one thing I didn't want to do, and that's that I'm going to push the tire down off the rim. Now what I'm going to do is actually push it down and look where the 2 rims meet, and I'm going to make sure I don't have that tire pinched in there. Once I'm sure that we haven't pinched the tire, then we go ahead and tighten our 3 bolts down one at a time, and there our tire's mounted. We're ready to go ahead and inflate it and put it on the airplane. Now, whenever deflating or removing a tire or changing a tire, remember to first let all the air out. Never try to attempt to take these rims apart with air in the tire. And always add a little extra talcum powder, and always check to make sure you haven't pinched that tire. Once we've mounted our nose wheel, then we're ready to go ahead and mount it onto the plane. We start by inserting our U609 and 610, and they go on the outside here as spacers. And then put our wheel in place, and slide our bolt through. And it comes out the other end. Now this will just be temporary, and we want to go ahead and put a washer and a nut on it temporarily. There'll be some little mounts that'll mount on the side here. I actually mount right here where the bolt goes through, and another one right here. Turn it around. It'll mount here and here, little plates, and that'll help hold the nose gear wheel pan on. But for right now, we just want to get this on and get it in place. We have not pumped grease into the grease fitting in the front here, and we probably won't, because we'll probably be taking this apart at least 2 or 3 more times before we're ready, as well as, what we'll have to do is there's some fiberglassing needs to be done here and all, so this will come off again. But for right now, there's the nose wheel mounted on. Before we mount our main gear, we had a couple obstacles to overcome. The first was the nut that would hold the wheel on wouldn't thread on. Now this one does now. Forcing it on is not a good idea. The threads are just a little dirty. So we borrowed a file from a friend of ours, a special file for just cleaning out threads, and you get the file for a different thread pattern. It cleans 3 or 4 threads at a time. Cleaned it up and it was fine. The next thing is the axle was a little dirty, and this wouldn't fit on. And if this doesn't fit on, your wheels won't fit on. So to clean that up, what we did was just get a 1-inch belt, sander belt, and you just sort of polish it down. You don't want to do this too much in one place, so you start at the top and work it down like this a little bit. Start at the bottom, come up a little bit, start at the sides. Now it takes a little bit more than what we're showing you here, but that's how you just keep working it down, and eventually put a little oil on it. You want to do this dry. When you're working it with the belt sander, you want to work it dry and then oil it right away so it doesn't rust. And you'll find that this now will fit on. And with this fitting on, your wheel will also fit on. So once we've done this, the next thing is to go ahead and put the gear on the plane in the mount. Once we've mounted the gear in the gear mount, now this is the front of the gear, this is the back of the gear. You're looking from the front of the airplane right now. We start by placing our U604. Now the U604 is this weldment, and there is an inside and an outside, and the outside is where the welding is. It has 4 holes pre-drilled in it. 2 holes are close together and 2 are far apart. Now the far apart ones basically are the back. You want the 2 close together ones on the top. So what we do, we slide the 604 on the gear, and what we want to do is get the top of this level. Now remember, the plane is still sitting in the jig, and it's still plumb and level. We just simply slip some bolts in to the 2 top holes, and then we put a level on the 2 bolts, and when it's level, that's where we want it. Now remember, whenever you're working on the gear, whether it's this part or the wheel pans, you always want to work on them as they are in the in-flight position, because you want your wheel pans to be straight in flight, not straight on the ground. So we want the brakes and all straight, like it's in flight. So the 2 small holes are here, they're leveled on top. We've pre-marked the center between the wider holes, and what we actually did was pre-drill an 1/8 inch hole through the back of it. Once it's in this position, we pre-drill or continue to drill through that hole onto the gear leg, just enough to mark it. Once the gear leg's been marked where that hole needs to go, we then pull the U604 off, take the gear leg out, go over to the drill press and drill a hole clean on through. Now we've already done that on this one, and we'll go ahead and put our bolt. Once that's done, you put the 604 back on, get it in position where your 1/8 inch hole is in the 604, finishing, open that up to the 5/16, put it back on your gear leg, and then finish drilling all the way through. And put your bolt in. Now, one thing you don't want to do is what I did, is put your bolt in before your brake flange goes on, and the studs stick to the inside. So go ahead and put your brake flange on, and these may be a little tight. We had to work these out just a little bit with a file. Now, when you mark this hole, make sure you take into consideration that this brake flange is going to be on there. Don't mark the center from the outer edge to the flange here, because you've got this brake flange that goes on first. So you want to Make sure that's on before you actually do any marking. Okay, once that's on, next we want to go ahead, and you put your nut and your washer on. You want to go ahead and put your wheel on. And make sure you have your little spacers go inside and outside. Your wheel goes on. Then you have to put your nut on. Now what we're concerned about is we have to drill a hole through the end of the axle here for our Carter key for our nut. So we go ahead and we tighten this nut down. Okay. Now, you don't want to get it too tight. Your wheel should spin free. If you got it too tight, what will happen, your wheel won't be able to spin free, and you're binding the bearings up. So, and you don't want it to wiggle. So once you've got that, you got to set your nut so you got a hole on the top, and you want to go ahead and take one of your long drill bits and stick down in that hole and start drilling through the axle. Now, you only want to drill far enough to mark the axle. Once you've marked the axle, you take this nut back off. Now, one thing we also did when we drilled through the hole, before we took it off, we marked that hole. And what I did, I actually just drilled a small dent, not a hole, but just started drilling a hole. And that to me tells me that's the top. And that's where the pin's going to go through. Then we take our wheel back off. Run our nut back. Now our hole should be drilled through there, or started to drill. Finish drilling our hole through this side. Put our nut on until we can actually see that hole. Okay, and our pin will go in there. Then from the bottom side, we want to start drilling up through the bottom hole. The chance of drilling straight through and hitting this hole probably is a little on the thin side. So now we want to drill up through this other hole, and then our pin should just go right down on through there. Like that. Okay, so once we've got this, we can go ahead and put our wheel back on. Put our nut back on, and I'd go ahead and put the pin back in just so you don't lose it. For one reason, there's been several accidents where people have figured, well, I'll put that pin in later, and they don't even temporarily put it in. I wouldn't bend it, but I'd put it in, and they forget to put that pin in, and somewhere in their first flight or their second flight, this nut will just back right off, and they come in with only one gear, which makes for an exciting landing. So that's all we want to do right now. Now, how this corresponds is you've got your brake cylinder goes on the back, and we're not going to worry about that right now. All we're worried about for right now is just getting the gear on, because once we get a little further along, we're not going to be able to take this gear off. So we want to just get everything drilled and get this in position, again, to be bolted in, because what will happen, this will get some bolts through here like this, and that'll hold that on, and then this will hold your brakes on like this. But for right now, we're just mounting the gear. We're not going to put the brakes on. While we're working on our gear, we're also working on the fiberglass for our canopy. Now, what I mean is the fiberglassing that gets done in here and also across the top here at the seal. Now, if you don't like fiberglass, your other alternative is to build a nice aluminum fairing that goes in here. I'm not that good at forming aluminum, so I'm going with the fiberglass. Now, the fiberglass isn't that bad. We use fiberglass tape, and what I mean by that, it's not a sticky tape, it's just the woven tape. It's 2 inches wide. This works out much better than getting sheets of fiberglass cloth and cutting it in strips, because you don't have all the frayed edges. The first place we're going to need to do is along here in front. Now, this will all be done at one time, but it'll go right like this and all the way around to form this seal between the canopy and the front of the fuselage. And it'll come around all the way to where the canopy and the windshield splits. Now, the second place we'll fiberglass while we're doing is that area, and it'll go up across the top like this, and it'll come across that split, overlapping the canopy part about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch. And we'll actually layer these in. We'll put one across here, and we'll put one over here, and then one across here. It's not as bad a job as people make it to be sometimes. One of the tricks we found is that if you don't want fiberglass on something, cover it up. We'll go ahead and cover this whole forward part of the canopy, or the cowling, with plastic. The plastic is still on the canopy here, and we'll actually take masking tape and tape along here where how high we want the fiberglass to come up onto the canopy, and the rest will be taped off. Now, this does two things. One is it gives us a guideline where to put our fiberglass cloth when we're laminating it in, and two, it covers the rest of the canopy or the windshield so it doesn't get fiberglass on it. Same thing with the forward part of the fuselage, same thing with the side, so we don't get fiberglass. It may drip, but we're going to try to avoid that. So from here we're going to go ahead and tape off actually the area where we want fiberglass to be, and that of course gives us a protected area where we don't want fiberglass to get. Now, how we started putting our tape on, first we did our top piece. What I did, I took my ruler. Now, our tape is 2 inches wide. One layer we're going to bring out a little bit to get a nice fairing effect. So we're going to put about a 2.5 inch fiberglass strip in here. So what we did, we took our ruler and we put it on the windshield and we pushed it down until it contacted the aluminum, and we marked at the 1.5 inch mark. Now, we did that all the way along and all the way down here, and that gave us this contour line. It gave us a real nice smooth line that way. Then from the bottom of that we come down with our 2 inches and over here, or our 2.5 inches. And what we did, we actually put it on here and pushed our ruler down, not till it was flat, because we want to fair this out a little bit. Marked our 2.5 inches. Did 2.5 inches all the way along, and that'll be where we put our next row of tape. Next, we have the same problem here. We've got our split here where our canopy and our windshield divide. We've got a 2 inch tape, and we're only going to do it 2 inches. So what we do is we measure a 1/2 inch overlap on the canopy and 1.5 inch overlap on the windshield, and we just put a ruler on it and put a couple little tick marks. 1/2 inch, 1.5 inch, 1/2 inch, 1.5 inch, and we'll do that all the way up and over, and we'll masking tape that in. Once we've masking taped off where our weather stripping will be, and we've applied our plastic. Now, all this is some ordinary plastic kitchen bags that we've stripped out, and actually it sticks to the aluminum pretty good with just some static, but taped it all off. and now our area is all masked off. The next thing we want to do is two things, and that's in preparation for putting our fiberglass on. One, the areas that will be fiberglass, the aluminum and the plexiglass, will be scuffed up with some emery cloth. The aluminum will be cleaned up, and all the glue residue will be taken off the plexiglass, and it'll be scuffed up to give as good a surface as possible for the fiberglass to adhere to. Now, the other thing we want to do, this little half-inch ridge right up through here that we don't want fiberglass to stick to, we will have to wax. And we'll just take some ordinary car wax, and just this half-inch strip right here on the windshield or on the canopy side, we'll go ahead and wax that off with some car wax. And that's so the fiberglass won't stick to that. So from here we're going to go ahead and scuff everything up and wax off the areas where we don't want the fiberglass to stick to. In preparing to do our fiberglassing now around the canopy, we need to get ready. Now what we do is we take a board, and this was part of the shipping crate, and we cover it with plastic. The reason for the plastic is that the fiberglass won't stick to it, and when it's all dry we can peel it off and we can reuse it. Next we'll need our epoxy resin and epoxy hardener, and we even get it with the little measuring spouts, and this measures 2 to 1, so we give 2 pumps of this and 1 pump of that. We've got exactly what we need. Need a container to mix it in, a little wooden stick to stir it up. How we apply it is actually just using some foam rubber, and we'll dab it in here and dab it on, and we'll show you how that, but you want a couple of those. We've got 3. Pair of scissors, just in case we need to cut anything, and 4 of the examination gloves that we use, and we'll double coat our hands. And so we start by just mixing up the resin and getting ready to go from there. Now once you've got your fiberglass mixed well, and what I mean by mixed well is you mix it until you think it's thoroughly mixed, and then mix it some more. And you can look at the color. If you see waves of color changes in there, it's not mixed well. Once you got it mixed well, you take your little foam rubber and you dab it in there a little bit, and what you're going to do is just dab the fiberglass resin into the cloth. You don't want to pour it on, you'll get too much on there, and you just want to dab it in there until the cloth is wet but not runny with it. Now, this isn't supposed to be real messy, and you're just trying to pregnate the cloth with the resin. You're not trying to get it sopping wet. So we just, and you can see the cloth shows, you know, that it is wet. I mean, you can tell when you got enough on there. Now this strip here was already cut, and this is a front strip. What we've decided to do is actually put 4 layers on the front, going around the front, and 3 layers going over the top. So depending on the space you have, that's half of it. We can fold it up here. Now I know I've talked to people that say they like to just sort of dip the tape in the fiberglass and then take a squeegee or something and squeegee out the excess, and that may work for them, but I found that wastes an awful lot of resin. Good epoxy resin is not cheap. And as you can see, this isn't very messy. And keeps the usage down. Okay, so that's how we impregnate the cloth with the resin. Okay, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and start laying our tape on. Now I've took and marked the center of the tape with a marking pen, and we know where the center is. It's right where our windshield support post is. So we lay half of it down, and we'll bring the other half over. And remember, we're going to feather this down, so the first tape will go all the way up next to the masking tape, and we just very gently pull it down. And it's pliable that when you get around the curves here, you'll be able to pull it some. Now, what we may have to do on some of the sharper curves is take the scissors that we talked about, that we had, and just cut a little notch, a little nick in it to help it bend a little bit. But first we want to get it done on the straight parts. Now, once we've got it there, we actually take our little sponge, and it should be wet enough now, and dab it in, and this is just helping to mate it down. Now, we want to get a nice smooth curve here, and we don't want it to drop off, so we're going to pull this cloth out a little bit as we dab it down. And we're just making sure we got a good contact, and you can see it when you want to get all the air bubbles out. And you may want to put a little resin on it, just to, if you got trouble getting some of the air bubbles out, it could be just a little too dry. Okay, and we just want to work that tape right on around good. See here, we just want to get all the air bubbles out and start getting a nice fit to our tape. Once we've got our first layer of fiberglass tape all in place down here, we want to put our first layer coming across the top. And again, we've marked the tape, and we know that the center is right there at the handle. Now remember, before we've done all this, we've scuffed up the fiberglass or the plexiglass where we want the tape to stick, and where we don't want the tape to stick, we have put some car wax on it. And the car wax is strictly there just to stop the tape from sticking, or basically the fiberglass from sticking, so we can get a nice mold. And we want to run it right down between our tapes, and I've measured this real tight. There's not much room for error here. And they overlap here in the corner. They'll overlap. All right. And then go around to the other side and pull it down that way. And it just takes a little work, not near as bad as everybody would like to make it out to be. Not the most fun job in the world, but certainly not the job that gets the reputation for being. And we'll get our little sponge with just a little extra resin on it. use it to get the air bubbles out. Make sure we get a good seal. And same thing on this side. And there we go. We've got our first layer of fiberglass on. Now from here we'll just repeat this process. When we do the front here, we'll lower each layer down a little bit, and that'll give us a little bit of a gradual sweep in there, a little bit better. The top will just be one right on top of the other, and we'll get this job done. Once all the layers are on, I go back and I take my finger real easy and just run along, and what I'm doing is just checking for any wrinkles or bumps and trying to get a nice contour in here. And boy, I mean real easy. You apply any pressure at all and this stuff will just slide with you. So you just want to real easy. Okay, now the last thing we need to do is something that I never thought would work when somebody first told me about it. So if you, while listening to me, you seem a little skeptical, don't feel bad.